Week 8, kids, here we are, halfway through the season, and some teams have handled business, other teams not so much, but here we are, week 8. My friend Nutmeg, how are we doing today?
Very good, Bucks McGee, very good. And I see you're rocking Baker today. I am also rocking a certain quarterback in this one.
Indiana Jones all day, every day, man. I'm impressed with the gear, man. I told you he was the man. And yet again, Indy handling business, and they very well could be the cream of the crop of the AFC.
Yes, sir. I certainly hope so. And we'll get into the Colts more in a second. Now, as we both prep ourselves to enjoy a victory Monday,
Oh, yes.
the day didn't exactly start off with a very happy note. We should pay our respects to a somewhat of a legend with his team. Put in a long career, put in the work with the New York Jets. Nick Mangold, longtime center for that team, sadly lost his battle with a rare kidney disease, which he fought for hard quite a bit, especially lately. It was in the news quite a bit. So Nick Mangold has passed at the tender age of 41, and this is a guy that kind of, it's easy for both of us. You, of course, being an old Patriots fan dating back through the Brady years, and me being a Colts fan, was easy for us to develop a hatred for the Jets. But Nick Mangold
Mhm.
was one of the players that was hard to hate, even in spite of that.
No, exactly. He was a guy who, heart and soul of the Jets. Being, of the former Patriot, fan base, understanding that, when dealing with the Jets, you knew Nick Mangold was going to be the guy. He was always going to be that guy who was going to give his heart and soul to that team and was going to give everything. So definitely, you pay respects to Nick and his family. It's a tragic loss, especially at such a young age. But it's tough to see when something like this happens. All you can do is like I said, prayers to the family, prayers to the organization, and he should forever go down as one of the best Jets out there.
Oh yeah, and it's especially in light of the fact that the Jets at one point had Kevin Mawai, so there is very much a strong hierarchy of centers in the Jets organization.
Oh, definitely for sure. You had, like you said, Kevin Mawai, and then Mangold came in and continued that tradition. So all you can do is just as a person, he's a solid individual. So prayers to his family and everyone in the Jets organization. It's tough when something like this happens, but you pay respects and you kind of see that football is more than just what the scoreboard is. So definitely, I pay my respects to the family and the organization, and it's going to be a tough time, but Nick left a quality legacy with that fan base. So just respect all around.
Yeah. There's no easy transition into talking about the nitty gritty of a football Sunday, but yet we will have to maintain that. So the
Mm-hmm.
only proper way to transition from this is to talk about the Jets.
Go ahead, and I think somebody on this show kind of
Somebody
said,
did.
maybe things could happen, and lo and behold, I think it was this guy. And at the end of the day, you got to give the Jets their props, man. They were able to pull this out. It's I was impressed. I was watching highlights on TV, and it was just like the Jets they never give up, and I give them the respect for that. They pushed, and for some reason that Cincinnati just couldn't figure it out, and the Jets figure it out, and lo and behold, they get their first win of the season.
Yes. Well, welcome to the winners board, Jets, and welcome to the winners club, Aaron Glenn, first time in his head coaching career. Now they did, and it was, I don't, maybe it was a little bit of an inspiration from the passing of Nick Mangold and trying to honor his honor his legacy and his passing.
Mhm.
But they were down 15 points with 2:34 left in the third. So Cincinnati, despite that terrible defense, was taking care of business for a little while. But the Jets came right back and poured it on. Brees Hall, first huge game of the season, first ridiculous game of the season. Really, he's been very average this year. Scores twice, and the Jets complete the comeback. Frozen. Everyone stand by. We seem to be frozen. Bucks McGee seems to be frozen. We'll continue the show as soon as Bucks McGee is back. We'll continue the show as soon as Bucks McGee is back. We had a little bit of a frozen situation. Live TV, folks. That is a thing. So we'll continue the show as soon as Bucks McGee is back on the program. We're in the midst of talking about the Jets' comeback over the Cincinnati Bengals. So we'll continue that. We'll continue that as soon as Bucks McGee is back on the air. But yeah, that was 2:34 left in the third with the Jets down 15 and completing the comeback over the Bengals. So we'll continue the show as soon as Bucks McGee is back with us. Bucks McGee back on the air.
Here I am. All right.
To continue our discussion with the Jets, it interesting enough because JaMarr Chase, the JaMarr Chase force feeding strategy for the Bengals, they still force fed him. He had 12 receptions, but he was not able to find the end zone. So that, of course, was a little bit of success in terms of keeping uh, keeping Cincinnati at bay long enough to complete this comeback.
You got to give the Jets credit. Like they just, like at some point you were sitting there and while you're watching this game, and it's like, okay, Cincinnati's going to handle this. Like it just seemed like it just wasn't there. But then the Jets just kept chipping away, chipping away, chipping away, and then lo and behold, Brees Hall throws this touchdown, and you're like, so there's life. And then next thing you know, you're thinking, okay, so the Jets have done their thing, but Joe Flacco's going to handle business, and this is how it's going to be a heartbreak situation. But lo and behold, the Jets pull it out. You got to give them credit. I think at some point we were waiting for the Jets to pull out some kind of victory. Like we looked at this team and said, there's talent there. Like they can't lose every game. Like they weren't going to go 0-17. And lo and behold, I think it's kind of poetic that it's the Bengals. The Bengals, Joe goes down and you got Joe Flacco here, and it's like, okay, there's not going to be this turnaround. It just can't happen. And lo and behold, the Jets pull out their first victory. So you got to give them credit.
And this wasn't the only type of backwards day. in the NFL this week, and it also wasn't the only game that you kind of put a feather in your cap as far as being Bucks McGee. Bucks McGee is. I'm trying to think how to say that with Nostradamus. Bucks McGee is Stradamus.
Bucks because you were like, no, no, no. You were telling me that it wasn't going to happen. And I gave the Jets some love because I just had this feeling. And then who else was it?
Well, this one you actually had less faith in happening than the Jets pulling it off, but you still said, I would love to sit there Sunday night and say the Miami Dolphins took care of business against the Falcons.
Tua is my man. Tua handles business. And you sit there as, when you root for your team, you watch all the games and you're like, well, I need this team to handle this team in the division. The AFC East is my best friend this week, no doubt about it. They handled the business for me, and lo and behold, Miami looks like a totally different team this week. I just don't know where it came from. I thought, mind you, I gave Miami some hope, but in the back of my head, I'm like, all right, Atlanta probably will pull this out, but let's give Miami some hope. And lo and behold, Miami dominated.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. HN got the scoring off pretty early. And this game started off kind of interesting because Michael Penix was not necessarily expected to be an injury scratch in this one. Kind of got scratched, late Friday or Saturday. Wound up not playing. Kirk Cousins comes in pretty cold and obviously could not get this team going. Bijan Robinson was pretty invisible. So it wasn't just Tua's massive 4-touchdown performance, but the Dolphins defense actually looking like a professional unit as well.
Yeah, Bijan Robinson fumbles, early in the first half, and it was just weird, like to see, you figured, okay, Kirk Cousins is going to be able to throw the ball somewhat, and you figured, all right, they'll figure things out, they'll be able to pull this out. But once you figure out that, Drake London is out, you're like, okay, something's not right here. Something feels off. And then next thing you know, Miami goes in and just handles business. So Atlanta's got some issues that they've got to really figure out. It's just, you would think with all of this talent, regardless of, Drake being out, they'd have enough to be able to handle Miami. But no, Miami sits there and says, okay, yeah, we don't have Tyreek Hill, but we're still going to do our thing. The run game is solid. Tua plays well, and they handle business. Their defense really showed out today, so much respect to the Miami defense. I think this is the first time this year where they've been dominant. And now, they're sitting there going, okay, we know we can play. And Atlanta's sitting here going, I don't know what we're going to do, because they are very awkward right now. They are just not there. Even with Drake London doing his thing, being out, even if he comes back, I don't know if they would have won this game.
Lalo's review. Just don't worry. Hang out with us for a few minutes. We'll get to your Broncos. We'll get to your Broncos in due time.
Denver was legit. We'll get to them, but Denver was legit. I've always talked highly of Denver.
Yes. That's an interesting take on yours. That's like London obviously is such a huge part of that offense, but
yeah,
I guess you kind of put more stock in the fact of Penix missing than London missing.
Penix has talent, but it's either he hits his throws or he doesn't hit his throws. I thought with Kirk coming in, okay, he's been around for a while. He's going to be able to hit his throws. It'll be a little more fluid. But once Drake London was found to be out of the game, it was like, okay, well, what's this going to be? The run game I thought was going to be a lot more consistent, and it wasn't. So at that point, Miami just showed out. Like, I was surprised what this game became as it went on. It was like, all right, as Miami's defense got more stops and more stops, it was like, okay, they felt like they were going to pull this out no problem, and Atlanta just looked lost to me.
No,
They just looked lost.
they didn't get a touchdown till garbage time. I mean, this was Miami end to end.
Yeah, Algieri, gets the touchdown, but at that point you're like, all right, this game is over.
Yeah.
So, like I said, with Atlanta, with all this talent, they just can't put it together. So the question is what is the issue? Is it coaching? Is it just the players? Is it not the right mix? Because I thought, Kyle Pitts was going to be really big in this game. Once, you find out that Drake London's not playing, I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe he can, do something with this team. But lo and behold, nothing. And Tua just with his visor, because he got poked, he's got like some eye issue. So it's like, all right, you're thinking, okay, Atlanta's going to handle business. Nope. And Miami just does what it does, and bingo, they pull off the win.
Normally we reserve the fraudulent penthouse for teams, but it's getting close to the point where we need to start reserving rooms for players, and Kyle Pitts is probably the front running candidate to be inducted to the fraudulent penthouse.
At this point, if I'm Kyle Pitts, I want to be somewhere else. It just hasn't worked out in Atlanta. If you can put him somewhere where he just fits right, then he's gonna be great. Like I've always said, when he came out, he was supposed to be the unicorn. He was going to be this unbelievable talent, but for some reason, he just doesn't fit in Atlanta, and I don't know why. It's crazy with all the talent that they have, they just can't figure it out. But if
Yeah.
I'm Atlanta, just trade him off, get some draft capital, and move on. If I'm Kyle Pitts, I want to go somewhere else because it just isn't working.
Yeah, trade him now while he's still young and has a lot of value. Get rid of Raheem Morris at the end of the year. They need a very much kind of a start from scratch situation.
Exactly. It's one of those things where there's like a lot of talent, but it just doesn't mesh, and they've got to figure out how to get this to work. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I think there may be some changes in Atlanta, whether it's roster. I think Raheem gets another year. I don't think they're going to cut him out right off the bat, but I think it'll become a warning signal at some point for him. But it is what it is. You got to give Miami credit. They pull off the win, and there you go.
Yeah, an otherwise lost season has at least a little bit of an extra highlight there. I think what saves another year for Raheem Morris is the fact that Penix has shown enough to make the organization probably think that something's there. This isn't an AR situation. And obviously, if you dump Morris before Penix, the new coach, like we always say, is going to want his own guy. So there's probably no benefit to dumping Morris if you still want to commit to seeing what Penix really has.
Well, you have no choice because you're not, because honestly, Cousins did not look good. So it's not like
No,
you're gonna, so at this point, Penix is your guy. Regardless if you let's say they were to cut Raheem out at the end of the year. Penix is gonna be your guy because it's not like you're gonna get a great draft pick. You traded a ton of your draft picks to help out with this defense. So
yeah,
you're almost in no man's land. So you're gonna have to roll with Penix for at least another year. So you kind of keep status quo and you see what happens. But the problem with that is you hope that Penix really, evolves and takes that next step. Because right now, Tampa runs that division. And if you're not really moving up and showing something, you're second best.
yeah. We joked that Cincinnati could have gone with Cousins over Flacco. I think Cincinnati's pretty glad they went with Flacco instead of Cousins right now.
At this
after,
point, yeah.
after this one, anyway.
Exactly. Exactly. And if Penix's knee isn't 100% and they go with Cousins next week, who knows?
Another game that's a little bit of a backwards day, has a little bit of backwards day implications, is the Niners going down to Houston. Houston was very much reeling this season. We figured that the Niners, they've shaken the injuries off. They've still performed. They're hanging in there. And sure enough, they go to Houston, and the Texans really handled them in this one. CJ Stroud's first 300-yard game of the season. Running game, receiving game, both very balanced. Niners just didn't show up. I think they just forgot they had a game on Sunday.
I think the injury bug finally caught up to him. In watching this game, I was shocked to see all of a sudden it was like, oh wow, these are the Texans of like 2 years ago where we were
Yeah.
like, ooh, this is going to be the team that's going to really make some noise in the AFC. And I honestly think that the injuries have caught up to San Francisco, and at the end of the day, the Texans were just a better team. I give San Fran credit for they put what they could on the field, but at the end of the day, the Texans were just a better team because they were healthy.
Yeah, the defense performed and held Christian McCaffrey to 80 something yards, 80 yards. I mean, nobody's really done that this year. He's been on fire in spite of all the
Mm-hmm.
injuries. So the Texans defense looked like the Texans defense that we've been wondering uh, could they keep this team afloat?
And there's some teams that are able to weather the storm, and then there's some teams where there's just a point where it's like, you know what, we just can't do it. And I think the Niners are the first team dealing with injuries as paramount as they are, and they just couldn't do it. I like I said, I watched a lot of this game, and it was just like Mac Jones tried, but Houston has enough talent, especially defensively, to really withstand what the Niners could do, and they handled business. And CJ Stroud actually looked like the guy who we thought he was.
A
It was
year ago.
finally, yeah, it literally took a year, and it was like, oh, this is the guy. This is the guy
Yeah.
who was supposed to take over, handle the Chiefs and be the guy going forward in the AFC. So you got to give them credit. When you deal with a wounded animal, you got to be able to handle business and put them down, and that's what Houston did.
And that's without, because Houston's not without their own rash of injuries. That's without C.J. Stroud's security blanket and Nico Collins. So
Mm-hmm.
this is that. Not only is it the effort we expected to see from him a year ago, but it's also an effort from him to kind of tip your cap to him a little bit because he withstood a lot of their own dilemmas with the injury bug.
Oh yeah, definitely. There's no doubt. But I think Houston is strong. Their defense is strong enough where it covers up a good chunk of the deficiencies of what the offense is. Like you said, Nico Collins and everybody else. This defense, especially the front seven, is strong, and they're able to perform. I think if their defensive front seven was injured and had the issues, then it would have been a different game. But no, Houston pinned their ears back, handled business, and San Fran needs to understand that these guys are just there until these guys come back healthy. It's a rough situation. And Mac Jones has played a hell of a season. I give him much respect, but I don't think, regardless of whether it was Mac Jones or if Brock had come back, that it would have changed anything. Right now, the Niners are dealing with a lot of injuries, and I don't know if they can handle if they have the personnel besides the front, the starters, to be able to handle things.
To that point, because we've talked about this in the past, how long is Mac Jones' leash once Brock's ready? Like, how many games like this can they string together where Mac Jones looks more beatable before they go back to Brock?
I think once Brock is 100%, they're going to go back to him because I think they feel that Brock is going to be the guy who can deliver them, and help, reverse what's going on. Plus, you're paying him a ton of money. Like, let's be real. Like you're paying this man a ton of money, so you're not going to put him on the bench. Now, let's say, the Niners had won today, and, let's say they only had one loss during this, during Brock's, injury issue. Then they may say, you know what, we're going to roll with Mac Jones until he loses again. But right now, once, Purdy's 100%, they're going to bring him back.
And one more game on the backwards day, opposite day Sunday. You'd figure when Lamar Jackson wound up being scratched from this one, you're like, all right, maybe the Bears will wake up. The Bears haven't been great, but their offense has been good enough. They'll be able to handle the Ravens defense. They did not. The Bears are still the Bears, I suppose. Tyler Huntley, all of a sudden, the savior in Baltimore. Derrick Henry finally looks a little like Derrick Henry, finding the end zone twice. So I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say the Ravens are back because they've dug their hole so deep. But so maybe the story here is the Bears.
And I said I was, if the Ravens don't win today, then their season's over. They were able to, piece it together and pull off a win. You give them credit. The Bears, I think, are still trying to figure out who they are. I think everyone thought that once, they changed head coaches, that they were going to be, this elite, offense that was just going to change like that. But no, there's still some issues there that they got to figure out. Caleb Williams, guy's talented, but there's going to be a point where they're going to figure out whether he's the guy or he's not the guy. And at the end of the day, they just couldn't figure it out. And the Ravens, I think, sat there, and they're a veteran type team, and they knew, okay, they couldn't stop Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry played a quality game, got his yards, and there it is. Derrick Henry was the reason that, the Ravens won. Now, if you're telling me that going forward, they're going to be a run first team and this is what's going to take them to, the AFC Championship, I don't think so. I think at the end of the day, Lamar needs to be there, needs to be, playing for them to have a chance. But they got their second win. Do I still feel confident in the Ravens? No, I don't. No, I don't. But, if they can string together 3 or 4 wins, then I have a different conversation, and maybe I'll change my mind. But, hey, it just shows that the Bears aren't ready yet. They're still trying to figure things out, and it's probably going to be till next year, but give them credit. They did what they could, but Derrick Henry carried this team, and their defense played, the Ravens defense played solid.
So the Ravens are calling the front desk of the Fraudulent Penthouse. Please let us out. Please let us out. And you're just not picking up the phone.
We're still not checking them out. Okay. Like if they had beaten, let's say, the Lions or something like that, then okay, maybe we pick up the phone and we say, okay, what do you need? Do you need some towels? Do you need some sheets? The issue. But right now they are still fraudulent. Like I can't, they've got to string some wins together. I need Lamar to come in and handle business. Now, if they start stacking up wins and all of a sudden it's like, wow, they've taken over the division. Okay, and then we pass the buck. But right now, nope, they still run the show at the Fraudulent Penthouse.
Now, on the note of Caleb Williams, how long do you give Ben Johnson before he loses his patience? Because this is obviously a supremely talented quarterback. You'd think that the quarterback, the offensive guru, would be able to figure out how to use him and turn him into a reputable starting quarterback. And the results this year have been extremely inconsistent, to be kind. So, like, how long do you think it goes before Ben starts to lose patience?
Well, here's the thing. You could be a quarterback guru, but if your quarterback just doesn't have it, it doesn't mean it's your fault that you can't fix them. It just means that this quarterback doesn't have it. It's the first year, so you can't really sit there and be like, okay, well, Caleb can't figure it out. He's done. You've got to give Caleb at least another year. Like there's weapons around him. Like there's no reason why Caleb shouldn't be able to figure this out. But if this goes into next year and there's, they're like 3-5 and they just can't figure it out, then Ben Johnson needs to say, you know what, this isn't my guy. I need a guy. We got to figure this out. So whether it's draft, free agency, you see what happens. But right now, Caleb still gets a pass until you figure it out. It's going to be interesting what Chicago does with Caleb. I don't know. Caleb has talent, but it's just, I don't know. I think sometimes he reverts back to, his USC days, and he's like, if I just run around and just throw some stuff around, I'm going to be okay. It's not what the NFL is. So Ben's got to figure this out and work with them, but we'll see what happens. But throughout this year, Caleb gets a pass right now. But starting next year, the clock is ticking.
Yeah, because I'm sure the Bears don't want to be in a situation where they exercise his option, they give him a big money extension, and this type of result continues. So it's funny how the leash is always so short for a head coach. If you don't get it done within a year, within a couple of years, for some guys it's only 1 year. They'll yank them and pay them out dead money for the duration of their contract. But with quarterbacks, like teams seem to invest them a little longer, and when the result is kind of a comparable example between the two, that the quarterback when the quarterback doesn't necessarily put up any more faith that they can do it more than a head coach does in the same situation.
It's just one of those things because, okay, if this quarterback doesn't work out, who do you go to? That's the question. It's like, okay, well, depending on where we fall in the draft, is there going to be a quarterback that's available that fits what we do that we can work with? If there's none of that, if you're like a run-of-the-mill team, you're not horrible, but you're not great, but you're drafting in the 17 to 23 range, you're not going to get anybody. Like, you're really not, unless you hit somebody, and it's just it's one of those things where you draft number 199, aka Tom Brady, and you end up lucking into the greatest of all time. You're gonna get a guy who's like, and he's not gonna do anything. So that's the problem. So what does Chicago do? Do they just sit there and say, you know what, whatever, let's just hopefully fall apart and maybe get a top 10 pick? You don't know. Plus, it depends on the year. Are there enough quarterbacks where you're going to get somebody, or you're just going to fall just out of that top 10 and just get a guy who's okay? So I think Caleb has talent. It's just he's got to figure it out. So I think however this year ends, next year is going to be absolutely vital to what Chicago does. It is what it is. It's really tough to come up with somebody who's the guy who's going to be your 15 to 20 15 to 17 year franchise quarterback. It's you either hit or you don't.
A Brady reference. Ding.
Ding. Summary. Ding.
So as you're not ready to let the Ravens out of the fraudulent penthouse, there's a couple teams this week that were able to stave off concerns for now that they were going to take up a room for a little while. The first one was the Denver Broncos. We're a little worried about them after that Giants game, but they came out and smacked the Cowboys around, hung up a crooked number, wound up winning by 20 points just the same.
Yeah, I think I said they were going to handle business. It's the thing, I'm impressed. Denver said, okay, we got to handle business, and they did. Like the offense exploded, put up points, and yet again, Dallas is all offense, no defense. Like this is what Dallas is. You trade off your best defensive player, and this is what you've got. So Denver sat here and said, we knew that if Dallas has got offense, they've got offensive firepower, but their defense is rough, and they were able to handle the situation. And Bo Nix and everybody else on the offense handled business, and here it is. It was a whooping, point blank, just a whooping.
Yes, an RJ Harvey sighting. Buried on a lot of expectations coming out of the draft, and buried on the bench behind J.K. Dobbins actually being healthy for once. And maybe it was just because this game was out of hand, but we actually kind of saw what they probably thought in him when they drafted him.
Yeah. Once this game got out of reach and it became a mess, then you start seeing some of the young guys, but that's what you do. Once you've got a game fully in control and you've got it, you're up a couple scores, you bring in the young guys, let them get get their feet wet, let them handle it, and that's what Denver did, and they handled business point blank.
And you you mentioned a couple times recently putting an eye square on Patrick Surtain. He held CeeDee Lamb in check pretty well in this one.
You, like I said, this Denver defense is legit. Like they are an elite defense, and for them, they really showed out. Like I said, Dallas has got a ton of offense. They've got offensive weapons. But like I when we talked about this, I said Denver's defense, is if they can handle business, they're going to run the show, and that's exactly what they did. You can't, you know, at the end of the day, if Denver's offense can be consistent, they don't have to worry about their defense. Their defense handles business. If their offense can put up points, they've got a chance to handle the AFC. And I think, especially today, they showed, hey, don't, our offense came back and our defense handles business. So don't forget about us when you guys are talking about who's going to be the AFC representative. I
Yeah,
love defense.
good way to rebound off that Giants game.
Yeah, like every game, like you're gonna have those games. You're gonna have those games where people like, oh, you should be able to handle business, and you come up short. That's the way it is in the league. You're not gonna be 100% beating everybody and being dominant. Sometimes you need to take a loss like that to get yourself right again. And Denver came back and handled Dallas like they should, and well, you see what the score is. They did what they needed to do.
And the other team that's fending off a fraudulent penthouse, we were a little worried about the Bills, dropping a game to the Patriots before the Patriots have really turned it up, then getting embarrassed against the Falcons, and one more NFC loss for opponent. One more opponent loss in the NFC South for you. The Bills absolutely destroy uh, Carolina behind a dominant performance from James Cook. Sorry, folks. We seem to have lost Buccs McGee again, so we'll hang around for another couple minutes until Buccs McGee's feed comes back. So stand by, folks. We just talked about the Denver Broncos staying out of the fraudulent penthouse after taking a monumental effort to come back for the Giants. They handle business against the Cowboys. And we're just about to discuss the Buffalo Bills, their absolute steamrolling of the Panthers in Week 8. So we'll talk about that for a couple minutes when Bucks McGee's feed comes back, when he returns to the show. We've wrapped up our conversations on the opposite day games here, as far as Atlanta getting housed by the Dolphins, the Niners not showing up in Houston, the Ravens kind of squashing the Bears despite all their injuries and Lamar Jackson missing another game, and then of course the Jets' massive comeback against the Bengals. So we moved on to another discussion as far as teams staying out of Bucks McGee's fraudulent penthouse, which for the purposes of this conversation is the Denver Broncos after today's 20-point win over the Cowboys, which the game never seemed out of hand over. And then the Buffalo Bills rebounding in a big way against the Panthers behind James Cook's throwing up a couple hundred yards. Big long touchdown run. A couple touchdowns, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, the Bills also staying out of the fraudulent penthouse as well. So they both stave off that. So yeah, very much a backwards Sunday with a lot of games going in directions that not a lot of people saw, namely the Jets' comeback against the Bengals, the Falcons with all their injuries mounting, getting absolutely wrecked by the Miami Dolphins, a team that many people, including us, have written off this season, showing a little bit of life. The Niners, not their injuries finally catching up to them, as Bucks McGee said earlier, and being able to handle the Houston Texans, or being handled by the Houston Texans. Bucks McGee, welcome back again.
Here I am, man. Here I am, man. Spectrum at their finest, man. Spectrum at their finest.
So we're hopping into the Bills also staying out of the fraudulent penthouse. Absolutely housing the Panthers in this one. James Cook over 200 yards, couple touchdowns on the ground, one giant 60-plus yard run. So the Bills seemingly get back to the Bills that we figured they would be.
I love the AFC East this week. They are my friends. They are my besties. I enjoy them. Thank you very much. Yeah, like Buffalo just handled business. At the end of the day, they came through, handled business. Josh Allen is Josh Allen, and James Cook did his thing. Like there's really not much to say. Like they just came in and handled what needed to be done and put up the points. Andy Dalton is just not the guy, but when he's your backup, that's who you got. Like there's really nothing to it. Josh
Yeah,
Allen did his thing. Like there's really nothing to this game that I can really say, well, here's what, Carolina could have done. It's just not there. Josh Allen handled his business.
no, the only thing about that I will note is the fact that what we've seen out of the Bills, they very much could have not taken this seriously because it was a backup in for Bryce Young, and they very much could have caught themselves short, but they still came in and took the game seriously and did what they should have done.
I think Buffalo had to because what New England's done. Like New England is
Yeah,
right there. Like I think a lot of people were sitting there going, "Well, is New England for real?" They've got talent, but maybe they're not there yet. New England has shown that they are there and ready to take the division. So Buffalo needs to handle business, and I think Buffalo sat there and said, "All right, well, let's just get the win. Let's do what we got to do. We can only worry about what we can control," and that's what they did.
yeah. Now, as far as the good teams that handled business and have been handling business all season long, one of them, the first one, the Philadelphia Eagles, and there's two very much big running back storylines in this. One in a very good way, one in a very bad way. One, we talked about how Saquon Barkley's been the missing man in this one, 174 total yards, a
Mhm.
couple touchdowns, one a very very long touchdown run to get the scoring going very early. So good news for the Eagles, but bad news for the Giants. Cam Scatabo continued what Skat's been doing, scoring early in this one, and then dislocating his ankle, so that you would assume is a very lengthy period of time to miss. And the Giants' offense has been flowing through him, so that will indeed be a loss felt hard.
Oh, definitely. At this, with a dislocated ankle, Cam could be very much out the rest of the year. So, the Giants are, it was one of those things where, the Giants had the young guys and it was a lot of, positivity in this offense. And, it was giving hope to the Giants fans. With Cam out, they're just going to have to figure out what the run game is going to be. It's not like the Giants were going to turn around and walk their way and figure out their way into the playoffs. It was just it was a feel good story. Unfortunately, you don't want to see a young guy get hurt like that. So we'll see what that turns out to be. For the Eagles, it's nice to see Saquon get on the board. I think they're feeling good. They're like, okay, he had a rushing touchdown, had a receiving touchdown. They're probably hoping that AJ, comes back, healthy. They were able to handle business, but they also have to understand that it was the Giants. They should have beat them. And going forward, who's the next, any teams that are legit threats to them, they need to make sure they handle business. But when you're the Giant, you're the Eagles, you handle your business. It's a divisional game. So hey, you handled business. You won. You take the
And
win.
they should have handled business in this one, and they should have handled business in the last one, that Thursday nighter that they got upended by the Giants. So this was extra crucial for them to take care of, to kind of wipe out the memory of snoozing on the Giants the last time.
Oh, definitely. You know, it was one of those things where, okay, because when we talk, we've always said, you know, when it comes to divisional games, it's a split. We've always said, whether it's, you win the home game, you lose the home game, but you split either way. And I think the Eagles were like, okay, we were able to pull out, we need to win this game. It's a divisional game. It helps the record. We do what we got to do. So, but if Cam doesn't get hurt, this game could still be interesting. But at the end of the day, the Eagles handle business and pull out the win.
Yes. And to touch on a note you brought up before, are the Patriots for real now? It's hard to put a lot of faith in a win over the Browns, given that Dylan Gabriel, nothing against the kid, but not exactly lighting the world on fire. The Browns' offense the Browns are pretty much the polar opposite of the Cowboys. Very good defense, miserable offense. But, yet another game where the Patriots take care of business. Drake May looks great. And the Patriots keep on rolling to kind of give the Bills a run for their money.
The Patriots, you beat the teams you're supposed to beat. Like at the end of the day, you don't get to pick your schedule. They handled business, and Drake May continues to show that he is legit. Some of those throws he made today, I was like, dang, man, New England picked the right guy.
Yeah.
If you really look at that draft, New England got the perfect guy, and they handled business. This team, they scored points. Their defense is solid. Buffalo needs to be careful, and Buffalo needs to win the game. Needs to win the games they're supposed to win, because New England is right there. They're ready. They're ready to take over. Their defense was solid today. I give them credit. You got to give Drake May his flowers. The kid he can throw it. He is him. He can just chuck it where it needs to be. He made some incredible throws, and if this is what New England is going to be, Buffalo's got some problems, and this very, very well could come down to the last week or two of the season.
Yeah, imagine a toss-up situation for the AFC East at the end, because the Patriots have just hung around the whole time. And at best, their season series would be a split. At best, their season series, so they can't even. Bills can't even rely on a tiebreaker, a direct tiebreaker.
No, New England is legitimate. New England is a legit threat to Buffalo. Like if Buffalo thought that, they were going to, run the next 3 or 4 years of this division, those times are over. New England has talent. These guys are legitimate. And Buffalo had their run in the sun, and New England is back. There's going to be some people who are like, "Oh, well, I don't know about all that." Look at how these teams have played. New England is here, and they are going to handle business. So if Buffalo wants its chance at a Super Bowl, this is the year it has to happen.
And speaking of teams that take care of business against the teams they're supposed to beat, we'll get into my Colts in a moment, but you get the floor first, sir. Your Bucs taking care very much of a team that you deeply enjoy them taking care of business against.
Oh, the New Orleans Saints. You know what? Sometimes when you've got a bye ahead of you, you just got to handle business. And I'm going to be honest, my team is beat up. We're hurt. But our defense probably had the best game of the year. I give it Anthony Nelson. If you don't know who he is, look him up. Anthony Nelson, interception, touchdown. He's like a role player at best. The guy had a hell of a game. Tampa handled business, and the defense led the charge. Offensively, it wasn't the prettiest of games. The defense handled business. And when you have teams, like the Saints in your division who aren't that good, you've got to beat the teams you're supposed to. And, going at 6-2 into the bye is a beautiful thing. I think that's what I picked them to be. And you just sit there, you let your guys rest, and you get ready for the second half. But yeah, you handle business, you do what you got to do, and Tampa's sitting at 6-2 and feeling good.
Not too many times this year have we said Tampa's defense outperformed Tampa's offense.
Yeah, no, and it's the truth. But you know what? It's nice to finally have a situation where the defense, can kind of lead the charge. I think any team would love the fact that your defense can sometimes carry you when it needs to happen. And this is it, especially with the injuries and such like that of this offense. So we get a week to rest, and it is what it is. But to be 6-2, it's looking nice right now.
Yeah, I mean, naysayers will say, "Oh, well, it's the Saints," but when you have a struggling unit, sometimes you need a big performance against a cupcake to kind of get some confidence going.
No, it's the truth. You don't get to pick who you play. You see the schedule, you do what you got to do. If New Orleans isn't right, that's unfortunately not our fault, but we do what we need to do, and we're going to take a week off, relax, and New Orleans can figure themselves out. But at the end of the day, leading the division, we'll take it.
And speaking of confidence,
Oh yeah, here we go. Here we go. Possibly the number one team in the AFC. You got to give them their props. Led by Indiana Jones.
thank you, Barstool Sports, for creating this fine piece of art for my Colts, Indiana Jones,
You
filling
know,
filling the shoes that Anthony Richardson chose not to fill by anyone.
mind you, I gave props to Indiana Jones. I thought he was going to be the guy. Some people doubted him, but here, he's done his thing. You guys are, right now, should be given, the the props for the AFC, because I don't see any other team that right now can really challenge. You guys are a complete unit. It just comes down to whether you guys can stay healthy and just finish off strong.
Yeah, and the biggest health question mark for the Colts is someone that creates quite the difference between us. Because, granted, especially given my attire, I'm loving what Indiana Jones is doing. But I still think that the MVP is Jonathan Taylor. The man had his fourth hat trick today. He's got 14 total touchdowns. The season's only half over, leading the league in rushing. Uh, I mean, all respect and love to what the artist formerly known as Danny Dimes is doing, but the MVP is Taylor. He's been an unstoppable force.
This is where we disagree. I believe that without Daniel Jones, Taylor maybe doesn't hit these numbers. I think Indiana Jones has really been the difference in this offense. And like I said, I can't discount what Taylor has done. I give him all the props. But I think if it was AR, running the show offensively, I don't know if Taylor gets these numbers. So I think Indiana Jones is the undercover MVP here. But at the end of the day, if you guys play, solid all three aspects, offense, defense, special teams, you've got to give Indy credit. And right now, I think they are the team to beat in the AFC. Now, in a couple weeks, you guys, have KC. And I
Yeah.
think if you guys beat KC, then undisputedly you guys run the show. So that's going to be something come down the road in a couple weeks where you guys are going to have to really show out. But right now, I think you guys are the team to beat.
Yeah, I hope that's not a balloon popping moment because we could very well be 9-1 heading into that game. We have Pittsburgh next week. I never want to count out Pittsburgh because sometimes they're a boogeyman in recent history, but
Mhm.
I this Pittsburgh team I feel like is held together by a lot of little stitches and duct tape. So I don't think I don't think they're necessarily the most solid team. They're just the beneficiary of a division that's a little woeful at the moment.
Oh no, I totally get it, and it's a situation where until they beat literally, a team that's, playoff bound, we're gonna have questions. So you kind of have to keep an eye on Pittsburgh, but right now you guys run the show. And as long as you guys stay healthy and handle your business and beat the teams you're supposed to, it is what it is. You can't, your schedule is your schedule. You don't get to pick who you play. So as long as you handle business, how the chips fall is how they fall.
Yes, and likewise, you're celebrating a division win, of course, after this one. I am also celebrating a division win, and on top of that, a division sweep. The hopefully first division sweep for the Colts of the season. All of our other games, both Jags games, both Texans games, at the end of the season, get the Titans out of the way early. But you know what? A division sweep is a division sweep, nonetheless.
Exactly. You take it how you can. At the end of the day, as long as you handle your business in division, everything else is, you will fall as it falls. I will sit here at 6-2 and be happy with that and take a week off, get rested, get healthy, and then we go on, especially when you win on the road. And that's key. So when you get to, those guys get to come to your place, you feel a little better. But as long as you're leading the division, then you just roll with it, and what happens, happens.
Yeah. Well, what happens is very much the theme of Week 8, I would say. Bucks McGee, all the upsets, all the surprises, all the blowouts. Take us off air, sir, with your final thoughts of what the Ocho has left you with.
Oh, I feel good about the Ocho because I think there was some question about my picks and what I felt last
No,
week.
not
But
question.
lo and behold, the Jets handled business. Um, and at the end of the day, if your team wins, that's what it's all about. 6-2 is a beautiful thing. I enjoy that. All of us here in Tampa, all day, every day, we'll take it. There's going to be some interesting things once this week is over. Some teams are going to look at it and say, "Hey, we should have won. You didn't win. It is what it is." But if your team's on a bye next week, enjoy it. The blood pressure will drop a little lower. If not, keep on pushing because this season's going to get insanely intense. And to the Jets, first win of the season, much respect. Appreciate you guys. Yet again, much respect to Nick and his family. Prayers. Week 9, it's going to be a crazy one.